And welcome back to Coast to Coast. George Norrie with you, Jason Offutt with us. His website linked up at coasttocoastam.com. A few more monsters here, Jason. We'll take calls. What are the wood devils?
The wood devils are basically Bigfoot. They're described a lot as Bigfoot. The wood devils are tall, about 7 to 8 foot tall. Of course, like Bigfoot, they're hairy. They're more gray than any other color. And the one thing that really sets them off from other Bigfoot encounters is that they're extremely thin. They're not the big, thick, hulking, 3 to 4 foot wide shoulder beast that we usually get, and they're pretty timid. People will see them, and then the wood devils will hide behind a tree. And if the person's brave enough to go to the tree and see where the wood devil is, it's usually gone.
Do they look more animal or human?
Animal.
They do.
Which that really fascinates me about Bigfoot. There are so many different types of Bigfoot in the U.S. that, I mean, some are ape-like and other ones look more like big humans. So, what exactly is Bigfoot? One of these days, I hope to find out, George.
Next monster, the Awful. What is that?
I love the Awful. Not just because of the great name, but the Awful was reported in Vermont, in the towns of Richford and Berkshire, back in the early 1900s. It is basically a griffin. It had big wings, about 20 feet wingspan, serpentine tail, enormous claws, a lion's body. It was seen by a couple of lumber workers. They worked at a lumber mill, and they were walking across a bridge to take them into town so they could go eat lunch, and they saw it sitting on top of a business, and it glared them down until it flew away. There was another encounter around that same time. A woman was hanging up clothes, and she heard her child screaming from inside the house, and she looked, and there was this beast with wings, and it looked like a lion flying in the air, and eventually it landed on the house, and I would have run the other way, but she ran into the house to hide from it. This got press, of course, and it interested horror writer H.P. Lovecraft so much that he went and visited the towns and interviewed the people who saw it, and the Awful made an appearance in a couple of his short stories.
Amazing. Now, you say that there's a three-toed Bigfoot out there somewhere.
Yes, I do. And, there are a number of encounters of a three-toed Bigfoot. Some of them are famous, some not so much. Momo, that I mentioned earlier. Well, I'll get to him in a second. Let's go all the way down to Louisiana, is the Honey Island Swamp Monster. He's a Bigfoot that was seen in Honey Island Swamp. It was called Honey Island because there were so many honeybees that lived on the island. But it was a Bigfoot, and the people who encountered the Bigfoot, who saw it, when they came back the next day to take a look at it, all they found were these big three-toed footprints. And anytime it was encountered, that's what people saw. Let's take a step up, just north to Arkansas, the Folk Monster, which the movie The Legend of Boggy Creek was based on.
Right.
It was a three-toed Bigfoot. Let's take another step up. Momo, the one that I mentioned before that was seen in 1973.
In Missouri, right?
In Louisiana, Missouri, around that area. It was a three-toed Bigfoot. There were also less famous three-toed Bigfoot sightings in Iowa and in Minnesota. All of these were around the Mississippi River. I don't think anybody's put this together yet, and I'm actually writing about this in my next book on cryptozoology. It's probably if this thing exists, I'm throwing that out there. It probably travels by the Mississippi River because each one of those encounters was close to the Mississippi.
Exactly. Now, the Banshee of the Badlands, that doesn't sound good at all.
Well, no, because the Banshees from Irish folklore, if whoever hears this Banshee scream, somebody close to them is going to die soon. And the Badlands of South Dakota aren't really where you'd expect a Banshee. And if anyone's been out to the Badlands, it is a beautifully desolate place. and the banshee scream has been heard out there, and this is one of the cases that has me convinced that people, when they immigrate, they don't just bring themselves, they don't bring their clothes, they don't bring family pictures, they also bring monsters with them. And a lot of Irish people settled in that area, and it was Irish settlers who reported hearing the banshee. Now, are they just going from their folklore? They heard something they couldn't explain, so they blamed it on the banshee, or did they bring the banshee with them?
Good point.
Very similar thing has to do with Tommy knockers in Pennsylvania, and then later out in California. Tommy knockers were supposedly the ghosts of the people who betrayed Christ. That's the folklore. But what they were always described as diminutive miners that would either do mischievous things to miners, or if they were disrespected, they would cause cave-ins. If they were treated with respect by, if they were given treats of something sweet, or maybe a mug of beer, they would find they would help the miners find a good vein of ore. And in it was a Cornish from Cornwall, England. The Cornish miners talked to the Tommy knockers, and whenever Cornish miners were brought to the United States to do mining, they brought the Tommy knockers with them.
How about the lizard men?
All right, in South Carolina, the lizard man, it's Scape Ore Swamp. This gained notoriety in 1988 when a 17-year-old was driving next to the swamp, and he had a flat tire. And he got out, Christopher Davis. He got out and was changing his tire. And he saw come out of the swamp about a 7-foot-tall, green, dripping wet, because, of course, it just came out of the swamp, humanoid. And, of course, it had red eyes, and this terrified him like it would any normal person. And he got in the car and took off. Well, the thing attacked the car, broke the antenna, the radio antenna, left scratches down the car.
Well, I think we lost you. Give him a call back, Jeremiah. His phone popped off, and they took him away when we were talking about monsters. So that was unbelievable. I'll tell you a little bit about Jason while we were waiting to get him back on. Jason Offutt, latest book is called The Girl in the Corn. It's a horror story. It sounds like a good book, but it does sound scary. Then he had another one called So You Had to Build a Time Machine. And the book that we've been talking about tonight quite often is called Chasing American Monsters. Over 250 creatures, cryptids, and hairy beasts. And he wrote that in 2019 as well. So let's take some phone calls while we're here. John in Wisconsin, welcome to the show. Hey, John.
Hello, George, and hello, Jason, if you can hear us, and hopefully you'll get back online soon. George, I have 3 quick comments. The third comment will segue to Jason's book. First, George, I wanted to let you know that my traveling companion had a setback, and unfortunately, I will not be at the event in Columbus on Saturday. So I wanted to wish you, Tommy, and your staff a great event. I look forward to attending the next one.
Thank you, John. And Jason's back. Jason's back on, so he can hear you.
Okay. Hi, Jason. This is John from Wisconsin. Jason, I want to say that most of my lessons in my life I learned the hard way because I had closed ears. Up until I discovered Coast to Coast 3 years ago, I had closed ears to monsters and many other things. And ironically, Jason, I grew up not far from the east of Bray Road, which is in the Elkhorn, Wisconsin area. But again, I had closed ears. So here's my point. I want to thank you for your passion for work. The people I have learned from, which are mainly George's guests and his callers, have the broadest vision of events and listen to other opportunities, have an open mind, and learn from it.
We're two phone issues tonight from my friends. Jace, did you pick up much of what he was saying?
Yeah, I sure did, and I really appreciate that. That is a great point. Having an open mind. I consider myself to be a skeptic in the truest sense. Is that I look at things logically, I look at things scientifically, but I also look at things with that kind of an open mind. I don't openly discount anything. I want to see some evidence, and I truly believe that a person's encounter counts as definitely solid evidence. So when it comes to monsters and things that the mainstream says aren't there, when science says no, this doesn't exist, how do you know, really? Have you been everywhere? Have you done every experiment you possibly could? Have you waited in the woods in the middle of the night in the Pacific Northwest, looking for Bigfoot? No, you probably haven't. So until then, I'll respect my own opinion.
And Jace, we were talking about lizard men before you disappeared on us.
Right. The lizard man of Scape Ore Swamp in South Carolina, a 17-year-old had a flat tire. His name was Christopher Davis. This was back in 1988. And while he was changing his tire, he heard a noise out in the water of the swamp, and he looked, and a humanoid creature was walking out of the water. When it got fully out on the road, it was about 7 foot tall, he thought. It had red glowing eyes. It's had lizard skin, had scales, and it started walking toward him. And he forgot about his tire, got in the car, and took off. And the lizard man attacked the car, broke off the radio antenna, left scratches on the car, and David was able to get away. And he went to the sheriff's department and told his story. And this story really exploded. There was a local radio station offered a $1 million reward for anybody who could capture the creature. So there are, of course, people all over the swamp looking for it. There were a few more reports throughout the summer. Some people, later recanted their story, saying they just wanted to keep the lizard man story alive. But the first story is fairly compelling.
Interesting. Let's go to Joe in the Bronx. Welcome to the program. Hey, Joseph, go ahead.
George, how are you, George?
Okay, Joe, not bad.
Good. Yeah, Jason, there is a creature that is said to exist in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. It's called the Jersey Devil. Can you elaborate a bit?
Well, this started in the 1700s. The mother Leeds had 12 children, and she was pregnant and she was giving birth to her 13th.
Jeez.
And she said she didn't want 13 children. This one was going to be the devil, and she gave birth to a normal child that quickly mutated into a monster with a horse-like head, horse hooves or goat hooves, bat wings.
Is this a myth or a real story, Jace?
Well, you know what? It sounds like a myth. It killed the midwife and then flew off, but it was seen for years. Napoleon Bonaparte's brother, for gosh sakes, claimed to have seen it. Firemen in Pennsylvania reported seeing something that looked exactly like that description. I mean, it doesn't sound real. It sounds like a legend, but there were some confirmed sightings of it. So really, who knows?
Strange, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. The world's strange, George.
Yeah, it sure is. We've got Pat driving in California. Welcome to the show west of the Rockies. Hey, Pat, go ahead.
Hey, George. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure thing.
Always appreciate the show every night. Hey, Jason, I wanted to ask you a question. I truck drive here in California, graveyard for about the last 20 years, from Sacramento to L.A. I'm based in Central California, and I could probably talk to you for the next 30 minutes. I have so much to ask you. But I wanted to ask you on one specific thing. Twice I've seen the Shadow Man. I haven't heard you speak about the Shadow Man. I've seen one in Sacramento, and I saw one coming off the Grapevine headed to Los Angeles. And the interesting thing is I kind of got a frightened feeling with the hairs kind of sticking up, but at the same time, I after it walked by, I didn't seem really threatened. I had a clear picture of his face, but it is a shadow. I just wanted to know if you may have an answer of why maybe I'm seeing it. As a matter of fact, the last one I saw was a year ago, October last.
And definitely, Pat, when Heidi Hollis comes back on the show, check in with her because she coined the phrase shadow person and hat man. Go ahead, Jason.
Well, actually, she might have coined Hat Man, but when I saw shadow people when I was a child back in the 70s, I called them shadow people.
Oh, you did?
Head.
Okay.
Yeah, I sure did. I actually wrote a book back in 2009 called Darkness Walks, The Shadow People Among Us.
Yep, you sure did. Where
I get into, and I interviewed, people, experts in all the major religions, and did all sorts of research through physicists and as many people as I could think of to talk to about it. And to answer the question about shadow people is, I came to the conclusion that there are a lot of different things that just look very similar. A lot of them behave like residual ghosts. Some of them behave like they're just passing through. I saw ones walking through my bedroom that looked like they were just going from point A to point B, and my room was in the way. There are ones that behave demonically, and anyway, so there are a lot of different explanations. A Hopi tradition with these is that they are harbingers of death. That they tell of, when you see one, somebody close to you is going to die, and I had a woman I worked with was telling me. This was a long time ago about her shadow people encounter, and her husband was dying of cancer at the time, and it wasn't until he passed on to where she didn't see them anymore.
Wow. There could be some truth to all of that.
There very well could. I think there's some truth to all of this, George, honestly.
I think so, too. Jace, where do people get your books?
They are with all my various publishers. They're at my website, which is linked to on Coast to Coast, and of course they're all on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and all the online booksellers.
We'll take a break in a moment and come back with more calls with Jason Offutt in just a moment. So, Jason, what is your next plan? What's next for you?
Well, I've got a novel I'm almost finished on, and I just are finished with, and I just signed a contract for the follow-up to Chasing American Monsters. It will be Chasing North American Monsters, where I'm going from Canada all the way down to Panama.
All right. We'll be back in a moment to take some final calls with Jason Offutt right here on Coast to Coast as we talk about Chasing American Monsters. Over 250 creatures, cryptids, and hairy beasts, and we've talked about just about all of them. Anybody have a story about a leprechaun? Check in with us as well when we come back. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you. We're back with our final segment with Jason Offutt. And Jason, let's go to the phones as they keep lining up for you. Billings, Montana we go. Jeff's with us. Hey, Jeffrey, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Before I get to my question, I have a real quick cautionary tale. When you mentioned the Colorado train with the Bigfoot thing, you mentioned what kind of person would dress up as a Bigfoot. Here in Montana, a few years ago, we actually had somebody dress up in a camouflage jelly suit by a forested area by a highway, tried to prank people with Bigfoot stuff. Actually got hit by 2 cars and unfortunately passed away from that. So do not do that. It's not worth it. So anyway, that happened up by Flathead Lake, which is home to the Flathead Lake Monster, and which I haven't really researched much. There's a lot of tourism built around that. It's said to be similar to what's in Loch Ness and Lake Champlain. I haven't done much research. I don't know how far the sightings go back, so I don't know if this is something that's gone back that far, or if it was manufactured for tourism. So my question for you is, what kind of research is involved when investigating cryptids, such as searching through local lore, old newspaper articles, interviews with eyewitnesses? And related to that, could you take us behind the scenes of the making of your book as far as gathering information?
Okay, yeah. Newspaper articles are a big one. Also,
the internet helps, right, Chase?
Well, the internet. I was a print journalist starting back in the 1980s, so the internet has been tremendous for research. Yeah. Looking back, back on what old newspapers had to say, making lots of phone calls. I would love to go to every single one of the places that I wrote about in my book, but yeah, I'm a college teacher and a writer, so I don't have the money to do that. But that would be that would have been the best. Just lots of digging. If I can go someplace, I will interview the people who have actually seen the monsters. And also go into go to the local historical societies and talk to people there.
Let's go to Joe in Idaho. Joe, go ahead.
Hi, George.
Hey, Joe, how you been?
I've been okay. I have a story that I've been wanting to tell for 30 years.
Let's hear it.
I was working at a facility. It was 7 stories high, so it was not, small. And I was kind of known as the fearless paranormal, and people would try to set me up and scare me and stuff like that. Anyway, I got called down to a lockup unit, and the lady that was down there, I don't know why I can't breathe.
You okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Got called down to this lockup unit, and the supervisor that was down there said, I don't know why she called you. And I said, well, what is it? She said, well, go to this door and open it. It was the number of the room. So I opened the door, and there sat this green, translucent. It had a mane. It had big teeth. Its face looked like a bulldog. And it didn't look at me, but you could see it breathing. And I was so startled.
How big was it? How big was it?
About the size of a bulldog. A standard, probably a shepherd, but muscly like a pit bull.
Geez, what do you think it really was?
No, that's the question. Because after I unfroze and closed the door back, I left, and another supervisor, the house supervisor, had told me her story of seeing it. So I don't know if I got set up, because 30 years ago it would have been kind of hard to make a hologram.
Hologram, yeah.
And the fact that the nurse that was there was really frightened and didn't want me there, I don't know. But that's what I saw.
Jason, are there a lot of fraudsters that would try to trick somebody like Joe?
Oh, there are, but they wouldn't trick somebody, just an individual person. That would be a lot of effort put up just for a joke. There are plenty of people out there. Do you remember Bigfoot in the freezer?
Oh, I sure do.
Right, and that, as much as I am convinced Bigfoot exists, those people who do something like that for the media really turn the average person away from any sort of cryptozoology at all.
Next up, we go to Don in Alberta, Canada. Lots of sightings out that way. Hey, Donald.
Hi, George. Hi, Jason. Just before I go into my story, I was stumbled across on the internet for time travel, and I found the name of the book. The English version is Cosmic Consciousness of Humanity, but it looks like it's really easy to build. Should be able to only cost maybe a couple $1,000s to build it. But it's basically, I had experienced it before with working with other types of material, but basically it's just aluminum sheet, and you just spiral it the right way, and it collects the energy. So you can take a trip and never leave the house. There's lots of documentation on it online. But going into the monster thing, when I was a kid, I seen this thing had to be like 60 feet long in the lake, and I'd heard a story about it before. It smashed up like a wooden boat. I don't know how thick the boat was. But the other thing I used to see all the time was this bird. It had about a 15-foot wingspan and had the body was about the size of a big dog. And it used to just, must have been seasonal because it wasn't around in the wintertime. So, but my question was about in Banff, there was a guy had a sighting up on the side of the mountain, and he's one of these people that documents his entire life. And anyway, but of course the military came in with their black helicopters and all this. I've actually seen the black helicopters. Like I know what he's talking about, and the ones he had documented, flying over at treetop level. But anyway, up in the mountains. So anyway, he's really well documented, and then he kept searching and searching, and then pretty soon they were at his house, and then pretty soon he got disappeared. I was just wondering, Jason, if you knew anything about it. But based on his photos that he submitted or his video, that thing was huge. Like it had to have been like we're talking in the 20-foot range. If it's the exact location, I know where it is because it was between Banff and Jasper, Alberta, that he photographed it or videotaped it. He put all this stuff online all the time.
Does Canada get many sightings? Go ahead, Jace.
Oh well, I'm familiar with that, and I really honestly don't know what to make of it. If true, it's a fascinating case, but it's also his word. So is he doing it just for publicity? That's my question.
Yeah, and that's a possibility, isn't it? East of the Rockies, Joe in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Hey, Joseph, go ahead.
Hello, George. Great to talk to you again.
Thank you, Joe.
Well, since I called in. And Jason Offit, so great to talk to you again, too. I spoke to you years ago when you were being interviewed by Ian Punnett here on Coast to Coast. I was telling you my shadow person story.
Oh, my God, Joe, that's been, 11 years ago maybe, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while. I highly recommend Darkness Walks, The Shadow People Among Us to anyone interested in shadow people. Great book. I have to buy it again because every time I lend it out, I never get it back. So,
well, and although I'm sorry somebody's stealing your book, I'm glad you're buying new copies.
It's all good. So regarding cryptids, one of my favorite TV shows is Charmed. The original series, not the remake, is garbage, but the original series, Charmed. One of the things I loved about that show is that show ran 8 seasons, and they explored quite a lot of various different cryptid creatures throughout the series. So one of the ones I was going to talk about the Banshee, since you covered that a little bit earlier. Instead, I want to talk about from season 1, episode 12. My favorite character, Piper, played by Holly Marie Combs, she gets scratched by this. I don't even know how to describe what this thing looked like. Sort of a humanoid / werewolf / I don't know. It was quite creepy. But anyway, she gets scratched by this character called a Wendigo. And throughout the episode, she slowly begins to turn into I think I'm pronouncing that right, Wendigo.
She
right?
She morphs into this thing, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, like, I don't know a whole lot about. Are you familiar with that cryptid, Jason? Like, what can you tell us about the Wendigo?
Right, I sure am. The Wendigo is has been misrepresented in popular media. The Wendigo is what happens. It's a Native American, mostly in the northern United States and southern Canada. It's where the legends are. If a human has to resort to or does resort to cannibalism, they will eventually morph into this beast, this Wendigo that looks like a starved creature. Some people depict it as like a deer walking on 2 legs. That's flesh is rotting. The skin's pulled back. You can see ribs, that sort of thing. But it's a creature that has to eat human flesh. It is doomed because of its sins of eating human flesh. It's doomed to do it for eternity. There is a way to reverse to reverse it, but I can't honestly remember what that is. But there was a legal case in, I think it was Wisconsin back in the 1800s of a man and his family were at the hunting cabin, and there was a huge snowstorm, and they were, finally people went and looked for them, and the husband was the only one left, and they found the remains of his entire family, and he'd eaten them all. And that was his legal defense, that he was a Wendigo, but he was eventually hanged. Wow. They didn't cater to that at all.
Let's go to Kelly in Eugene, Oregon. Hey, Kelly, go ahead.
Hi, guys. I have a question about like the hybrids or the are you familiar with Plum Island, where they do all those like crossbreeding of creatures and stuff?
Yep, I am.
Yeah, I watched a video today, and it was about all these different creatures that had floated ashore.
Strange biology going on over there.
Yeah, so I was just wondering if you came into any of that, like what maybe folklore is actually something that was created by man.
Well, when it comes to, that's part of the legend of the Chupacabra is that it came from Puerto Rico, the military base there. The legend is that it, was because of experimentation by the U.S. military, trying to create a type of deadly warrior that wasn't human. There have been a lot of cases like this. There are stories out there of pig human hybrids that have been created by various governments around the country. I mean, whether that is possible, I don't know. I do know that the Soviets and the Nazis were both working on chimpanzee human hybrids to use as soldiers. So people have thought and tried to do that. If they are still doing that today, the ethics of doing it are they're not there. Don't do it. But that has never stopped the government agents. Ethics have never stopped a government agency from trying something out. So I would not be surprised if that thing is still if that experimentation is still going on.
Jason, what are your thoughts on extraterrestrial visitations? You think we're being visited?
Carl Sagan said it, but he didn't say it first. I don't know who did say it first, but when it comes to intelligent life out in the universe is so vast that if we're the only intelligent life out there, what a great waste of space. Yeah, I think there has to be intelligent life out there. It annoys me, and I've talked to scientists about this, when they say the distance between Earth and the next possibly Earth-like, planet in the Goldilocks zone, the distance is so great you couldn't get there from here. And I agree to some extent we couldn't get there from here, but who knows if the extraterrestrials are 1,000 years ahead of us in science, it's probably could be just the blink of an eye. So are extraterrestrials visiting us? Have they? I think, very likely the answer is yes.
They've learned how to travel. You're right. They've learned how to bend space and time and travel instantly.
I mean, look at between 1903 and 1968. The first flight by the Wright brothers and Neil Armstrong stepping on the moon.
Exactly. It's dramatic.
Yes.
And just in a few years. Jace, once again, mention your website, if you would, please.
It's Jason Offutt, JASONOFFUTT.com.
Thank you, Jason, for being on the program. I always love having you on.
Hey, same, George. Great to talk to you again. I mean, I would say it's good to hear your voice, but I hear it every night. So it's great to talk to you.
Yeah, you got it, my friend. And Jason Offutt, he's doing a great job looking for cryptids. For Dan Galante, Tom Danheiser, Jeremiah Harris, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladesseur, Stephanie Smith, Chris Boros, Tim Banal, George Knapp, and Ian Punnett, I'm George Norrie, somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. We'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe, everyone.